Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani alongside Grant Turner and Mark Ostrander. We are weighing in, brought to you by USA Wrestling, national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Before we get into what's going on this week, two quick things. Number one, we will be live podcasting Sunday for what Mark calls God's country, which is Iowa, for the Iowa-Oklahoma State duel from Joe's Place. The podcast will go on at noon. We'll be on the USA Wrestling YouTube channel, free to watch. We're going to have some great guests. We're going to make picks. Be a lot of fun. And I would like to give a shout out to my friend Greg Warren, the stand-up comedian. He was on Matt Chat this week. It was a lot of fun. For people that don't know, he and I were high school teammates. So I've known Greg for almost 40 years, and very interesting listening to him and his process about how he comes up with comedy and the sort of try and fail and those sort of things, and some of the steps he took in life and how he's overcome, not being great right away at certain things. So I thought it was very interesting. We talked a little bit about wrestling, but a lot about life. Having said that, good morning, boys. How are you?
Doing great.
So we're recording this on Thursday morning, GT, the night after the Missouri-Iowa State duel. So let's just start with that. I'll start with you, Grant. Takeaways from the duel.
Well, as you can probably tell from some of my picks, I did not see a lot of the things coming that shocked the entire world. What a really cool environment that Mizzou put on for that event. College wrestling and college dual meet environment is really cool. So that was a huge takeaway. Also, Brock Mahler's shot defense is impregnable. That guy is. It was cool to watch that match. And once again, kudos to Mizzou and basically shelling out at home against a very highly ranked dual meet team and tournament team in Iowa State.
Marco.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Grant on pretty much everything he said. I think Iowa State, they're hurting at 25 right now because they lost basically their two best kids that they had there. So that, putting yourself six in the hole against a team like Missouri is going to be tough to come back from. Casey at 141 is struggling on the mat again. When you get ridden that long, and I still don't understand this, Grant, David, when you figure four above the knee and they call stalling on the bottom guy, it's not stalling. You can't move. You cannot get up to a base when they lock that knee out. I used to ride legs. I know exactly what they're doing. It shouldn't be stalling. You can't get that leg out of there.
So would you call stalemate? Would you call stalling?
I would call stalemate, or I'd call, if the top guy's not actually trying to turn him, I'd call stalling on him. You can't get out. I guarantee if I put it on you, I could ride you for a half a day.
Mark, you would get tired. You would get tired.
I get tired if I did it for 5 minutes, but that's not the point. It's hard to get out of. Grant, do you agree?
This might happen Sunday at the bar. We might look in a figure four above the knee.
By the way, this Mark Ostrander rant is brought to you by leg riding.
I just think I've wanted to say this for years because you see it every time a guy gets a figure four on some guy's knee. They're calling the bottom guy because he's not coming up to his base. You can't come up to a base unless you can go on one knee, and that's not going to work. You got to have that other knee, and you can't move it. So it's just my opinion.
Our GT, we need to get a second sponsorship with Nike knee pads, just specifically for Mark Ostrander for the above the knee pad. So.
All right, that's my rant for the day.
No, you're right, but it's amusing. So, a couple takeaways for me. Number one, I don't know if anybody got a chance to watch any of the pre-match interviews that Flo posted. The one with Metcalf was almost prophetic, where he talked about how Missouri's very scrambly and they're good on top, and in the big matches they won, that's how they won. Like GT mentioned, a 149 Mahler. Pinheiro took more shots. Mahler got in really deep at the second period and just lost it by like a second. But Pinheiro took more good attacks, got one that almost looked like a takedown where ISU lost the brick. But, Mahler's Mike Ironman's disciple. So everything he does there is intentional. It's not accidental. And then you mentioned 141 hard over Swiderski. Mark, when you and I were talking yesterday afternoon about this off air, the thought was, hey, if Swiderski's better on his feet, he's got a chance. Hart is winning the match 1-0 because Swiderski's not going to pick down. Swiderski's got to get basically 2 takedowns. And that's hard. Like if I know I'm wrestling Grant and I can't pick down, it changes my offense on my feet. Like I'm scared of getting go behind. I'm scared of getting out scrambled. Missouri concentrates on being good on their feet. JQ, same thing against Krazer, wrote him out. Rocky Elam against Bastida, wrote him out. So these are adjustments that Iowa State's going to make. You mentioned the atmosphere at Mizzou. That's in the Hearns Arena. That's the smaller of the 2 arenas. It's the older one. The Mizzou Arena is the new one, but they can sort of like partition that off. That's where I wrestled in the state tournament. And it's very cool. They did that. They used to do that duel in between. One year they did it between the backsides and the finals of the state tournament. They had like 6,000 people over there. That's when Jay Nyerman pinned Cade Brock and some stuff like that. So duels are awesome. I think that's, the least controversial statement we'll say all day. The interesting thing is Mizzou will actually drop in the rankings from winning the duel because Zach Elam lost, which was an upset, and Keegan O'Toole lost, which was an upset. And I think the other statement that we probably need to say is David Carr was ultra impressive last night. Like won basically all 3 positions, got away from O'Toole, had no qualms about picking down, won the takedown battle, and rode him the whole 3rd period. And I was watching with 2 of my jiu-jitsu guys when the 3rd period started, and I said, well, I don't think this match will end at this score. And I was sort of technically right because he got riding time, but I was wrong in every sense of the word. I thought O'Toole would get out and throw the kitchen sink at him. So that was an awesome duel. Speaking of sort of duels and their effects, that now means that the Big 12 title is a 3-way share, I believe, because Iowa State beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State beat Missouri on that criteria duel a week ago. Missouri beat Iowa State. Same thing in the ACC with Virginia Tech, Pitt, and North Carolina State. So I don't know the criteria on how they figure these out, if it's greatest margin of victory or things like that. GT, do you have any idea about this stuff? Okay. So
not a chance on dual meet criteria in a conference.
Yeah.
And I think they're all 7-1, David, except Oklahoma State's going to wrestle Oklahoma again. I'm not sure that's going to give them 8-1, so they'd have one more duel than everybody else. I don't think that's going to count that way. So
no, that can't count.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's basically your losses and that stuff. I mean, it's like if I'm 30-1 and Grant's 28-1, it doesn't mean I'm better than him. I might have just gotten 2 forfeits or two terrible matches. So it's how many losses you got. So, but anyway, one of the things that and I want your guys' thoughts on this, and then we'll get into rankings and some predictions and stuff. It feels to me like there are less dominant guys today. Like, I think doing the rankings would be harder than ever. Like, there were years where we had like Bo Nickel, Nolf, these guys at Zane, and not just Penn State guys, but like guys that were like, okay, that guy's number 1 every week. And GT, I'll ask you this first because you observed the rankings, but you didn't do them with Mark and I. I'll just point this out and tell me your, reaction to it. Mark, I told Mark, I said, the hardest guys to rank are guys that beat guys ranked above them and lose to guys ranked below them. Like if I'm number 3 and I've only lost to you 2 guys and I beat everybody else, I'm super easy to rank. So as you are observing this and, I'd say 90% of the schools are Nike schools. So you have relationships with pretty much everybody, and even the non-Nike schools. It's not like you're not friends with those coaches. Am I crazy, or is there something to what I'm saying about there's sort of more chaos this year?
I think, once again, each year in each class and each weight class, there's always some sort of like, you have some hitters and things like that where I would, once again, as a reference point, when you're talking about some of those guys that are like, very dominant guys that, Hodge Trophy winner type guys, right? I think that, if you look at all of the national tournaments and all of those type of things, I think that there are guys that are in the history of the past 10 years, like just flat out, they're this almost automatic, right? And you're like hoping to have like 3 or 4 matches where you have whoever it is that year, where it was, Matt Brown versus Chris Perry. It's like, well, hey, those guys are clearly like 2 guys that are just guaranteed like hitters at that weight. They're only losing to each other, and they're basically controlling matches against maybe like 3, 4, 5, and 6. But I think the years that you have some of that parity where it's not quite necessarily clear cut and like they beat each other. I mean, I would say that usually somebody like comes out of that and then you're like, oh yeah, they're dominant. Like at the national tournaments, because they've been beat by everybody. And it's like, well, hey, 3 beat 4, 5 beat 7, 7 beat 3. All of a sudden, whoever wins that weight class is like, oh yeah, all those guys were really good, but he was the one that won the title. Yeah. So I think it's after the fact where we start to have that conversation, because I think that we forget about some of those mid-season losses or, close matches that they may have had throughout the season. And then we basically say, well, hey, listen, he's a 3-time champ. It's like, well, you can't remember that, he had to come back and get him take down in overtime to beat number 17 in the duel at Tennessee Chattanooga. So
Spencer Lee's a guy that's lost regular season and Big Ten matches, and we don't dwell on that a lot, and we probably shouldn't, but it's happened, like you're saying, like he lost a pitch in the duel, those kind of things. Yeah. Marco, what do you think?
I think there's still those guys out there that are just head and shoulders above everybody else in their weight class, David. I really believe that. I know there's been some losses. I think the parity is coming in, 3rd through 7th, where you're seeing so much movement and guys are beating people above them and losing the guys below them. It's just different, because I think Spencer Lee is head and shoulders above everybody at 125. I just think he's the best kid in the country. Probably one of the best 25-pounders to ever step on the mat. I think that RBY is one of the best 33-pounders that we've seen in a long time. He's beaten Dayton Fix, who's a world medalist. Twice in a row. So, it's still there, but I know what you're saying. There is some people like Yanni lost this year. So I don't worry about that. I still think Yanni's the best kid in the country at that weight.
So let's look at it maybe factually. Like, I think and guys correct me, I think there's 3 preseason number 1s that haven't lost. And that is Spencer Lee, RBY, and Carter Starace. Okay, but Cole Matthews is lost. Yanni is lost. I don't even remember who, Brayton Lee or Will Lewan or whoever, those guys lost. Keegan O'Toole just lost. Aaron Brooks lost. Max Dean lost. Schultz lost. So maybe that's what I'm saying. Like 7 number 1s have already lost. Now, Brooks and Yanni didn't get bumped from number 1 based on body of work. The guys that beat them have, lost other. Actually, yeah, they've lost other matches. Coleman's lost a match, et cetera. Pinheiro, that kind of stuff, or Gomez. But I just, maybe what it is to me is like, if you had told me at the beginning of the year, Yanni's going to lose, those 7 guys are all going to lose matches. If you had put $100 bet on, and it's got to hit, all 7 guys got to lose, the odds had to be like 30-1 at least.
Probably more than that.
Right. So maybe that's what I'm saying. Just sort of mathematically, there's been some very surprising results. I don't think David Carr beating Keegan O'Toole was in itself a surprise. I think him winning 7-2 with riding time as a surprise. I don't think anybody took David Carr and gave 4.5 points away and still covered. Okay, and I don't think if Keegan O'Toole wins the Big 12s, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised. I think if the national final, if they're in it, goes to overtime, I don't think they're just 2 really, really good wrestlers. But like Max Dean losing twice in a weekend, Yanni losing. Like I told you guys this on air. I'm like, Aaron Brooks, like around Christmas, I thought was the biggest lock left. He loses to Marcus Coleman. I think, and then every one of those sort of in a vacuum, like, it happens. You combine them all in 3 months, pretty surprising. But it makes wrestling, I think, sort of awesome in a different way, right? Like, GT, you mentioned these weight class, like when Dake and Taylor were at 165, like nobody thought it would. Like, I love Tyler Caldwell. I'm friends with Tyler Caldwell. I know you are too. He was probably one of the best guys to never win a national title because he was just always at a weight with some all-time hitters in it, to use your phrase. But nobody thought Tyler Caldwell was going to beat one of them in the semis, the other one in the finals. I mean, like, those guys they're world champion level. But this year, it's a couple weights are super fascinating because nobody knows who's going to be in the finals. I mean, 41, 57, 97. Rocky Elam dominated Bastida last night. If I said to you Bastida beat him in the Big 12s, you wouldn't be shocked. I mean,
maybe.
I think that there's a lot to be said of like going maybe like you go wire to wire, like you're ranked number 1 in the nation in preseason and you make it all the way to the end and you're ranked number 1, right? And then you basically say like, hey, that body of work for that gentleman, he kept his ranking. He was a returning national champion. He's doing everything that he has to be able to do in order to get back to wherever, right?
Right.
Or you have a situation where you get to all right, hey, listen, we flip-flop. So we're both in the Big Ten. We've wrestled each other. We've split. You know, I beat you at the duel. You beat me at Big Tens. We're still number 1, number 2 in the nation. But it's clear cut that those two guys are, you know, on a, you know, whatever it is, warpath for each other. But I think to your point, David, where it was like where you're going wire to wire and you're just guaranteed points. Like we've had a lot more of those, like where national champions have gotten beat, national finals have gotten beat. And then also, to your point, we've had Max Dean go, I don't know, as far as down in the rankings to like what, like 6 or 7, and now he's back up.
Yeah.
Or like he was being in the finals, and all of a sudden now he was the 10th ranked guy in the nation because he had some bad losses or something to that effect. I mean, people were like hollering at the moon that Yanni was not the number 1 guy in the nation for a while, and it's like, well, hey, man, he lost, right?
Moon holler.
Right. So I think not only the fact of those guys being national champions or previous national champions or previous finalists is that they have not maintained even a top 3 position.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, listen, you're just out of the conversation then. It's like, okay, well then, and take that for an example for some of those guys at 157 that were maybe not national champions, but were like ranked extremely high starting the year, like Luan and Braden Lee. And like all of a sudden the wheels fall off on some of those guys because they've had some bad losses. And, you know, like all of a sudden you're ranked number 1 in the nation and now you're ranked 22nd.
Okay, so I've never seen what's happened to Brayton Lee this year, I don't think. I've never seen a guy be preseason number 1, at least 1 poll. He might be injured. Okay, like there's certainly a chance with how he's wrestling. If somebody said he was injured, it would make probably more sense than just the fact that he stopped being as good at wrestling as he was. But with no announced injury, that he has a losing record and is outside of the top 20. I don't remember ever seeing that. So anyway, a couple of other loose items to get to. The coaches' rankings came out. A couple things to point out there. Yanni was 3rd. RBY was 3rd. I talked to one coach on the RBY situation. I'll try to explain this as quickly mathematically as I can. There are 12 coaches that voted each weight. There are like 70-something schools. Each school gets assigned like 4 weights. The best score you can get is 12 to get 12 ones. Okay, like everybody votes you number 1, low score wins. Dayton got 12 twos. I'm sorry, Dayton got 11 twos and 1 1. Vito got 11 threes and 1 2. Okay. RBY got 11 ones and a 33 or a 34 because he wasn't included. Now, I talked to the coach, and he said to us he didn't have enough matches we weren't allowed to vote for him, which was clearly a miscommunication because the other 11 coaches figured out they could vote for him. Okay, but just a simple math, if 11 times 1 is 11, 11 plus 33 is 44, and that's higher than the other numbers. So that's why he was 3rd. So next time, he'll be 1. Now, I'm not by any means saying, so it's no big deal. I think it is a big deal. And I think coaches got other things to do besides do this. And I have several coaches that call me during this time of the year and they just say, like, what are your rankings? How do you do this? I'll share the site with them, show them everything else. And I don't think this is the optimal way. I don't think it should be a part of the formula, but just wanted to explain that. The other thing I wanted to point out, which the guys and I have talked about off air, the Nino Bonacorsi Isaac Trumbull match, where sort of he hit him in a DDT, didn't get hurt. Match continued. Bonacorsi showed, I think, some great sportsmanship on Twitter afterwards. Respect for Trumbull, respect for the staff. So I mean, that was a high profile match anyway. I think it was like number 1 against number 8 or 7, depending on who's ranking Trumbull. Nobody's hurt. I guess that's the ultimate good news, and they'll probably wrestle in the ACC finals in a couple weeks at NC State. So that'll be interesting. So anyway, wanted to point those things out. Let's see. So let's get into the rankings. Okay, so 25, not a lot of change here from last week. Usual suspects, some movement in that sort of 19 to 25 range, but this is going to be very interesting. This is the who can get on the bottom side of the bracket and make a run kind of thing, because there's a bunch of guys down there. Like if Pat McKee's at 7, and he wrestled Pat Glory on a 1-hour weigh-in on Friday morning, that's a fascinating match. And the Big Ten tournament is going to have huge impact on this. I will tell people this right now. If Killian Carnell runs the table, I'm going to guess he's going to be the 3 seed at NCAAs because he's going to be undefeated and a conference champion. And so I think he'd go ahead of all those Big Ten guys, just pointing that out. 33, Jesse Mendez moves up after his win. Mickey Philippi lost to Kai Arini, who is my preseason All-American homer pick. So good for Arini. He moves up. Philippi drops down. That hurts Pitt in the rankings. Not everything else is pretty chalky here. Biscaglia drops after his loss. Saccone moves up. Zach Redding moves up. By the way, the Missouri duel, I think, only had 2 upsets, like in terms of rankings, which was 165 and 285. So GT, Lachlan McNeil is a guy that I think I want to say this correctly, I think he's Canadian, right? Because he's like represented Canada on like these under 20 teams and stuff like that. So you've probably seen him at some of these international tournaments. Is him making the jump this year, something that is, I mean, if we look at his chart, I mean, pretty much since week 7, he's just keeps. And again, if you're new to this, going down is good because you're trying to get down to number 1. I mean, this is pretty good on his part, right?
Yeah. So, he represented Canada at the World Championships in Belgrade, and he's made U23 teams, and he's kind of made his way up. So, like, I think with some of these international guys, you maybe lose because they're not a part of Team USA and USA Wrestling's projections while wrestling in the US, because he's wrestling for Canada basically. And you kind of lose out on maybe like the hype or the media behind him. And it's like, well, hey, this guy's going to the World Championships, senior level guy. So I mean, I kind of knew about him in that regard. But once again, freestyle and folk style, you gotta play that game too, because some guys are extremely talented at one, and make the transition to folk style is different. But that's really a really cool graph to show, preferably as like kind of a freshman too.
Yeah,
hey, kind of out of the scope of things. Continue to do what you do, get some good wins, and continue to make your way up the ranking scale.
So Mark and GT know what a nerd I am, but I think this is super cool because you can see plot points here. It's the preseason week 1, and then he's just got the last 10 weeks. So starting at week 6, he was at 26, and he has climbed the charts to the top 8 now. So, and for UNC, which has a couple hammers, but not like a top 10 team overall, it's pretty interesting to watch. So, Mark, this weight I think is really interesting because you have guys down here at the bottom, like Jake Berglund was an All-American. He's at 15. Carter Young placed at the U.S. Open as a high school kid. He's 14. Alan Hart, who is preseason, if we pull him up, like, I mean, he's a guy going in the wrong direction. He was like in that 6, 7, 8, 9 range the whole year. Now he's at 15 or 16. So let me just ask it this way. Like, do you see a lot of chaos in the round of 16 and the quarters at 141?
I don't know about chaos. Those guys in the top 7, 8, even Happel at 9 are all pretty, and Carlson at 10. I mean, those are all really pretty good kids. And it's going to be hard to break into that, especially with some of the guys down there. I mean, Carter Young, I could see him maybe being an All-American. I mean, he's got the pedigree to do it. He's won huge matches, but he struggles getting away from guys at times, and there's some good riders up there. So we'll know a lot more after Sunday's match against Real Woods to see where he kind of sits, because Real Woods had some close matches with some other guys, and see how he does against him and see where he's at.
Well, and I forgot what you were going to say. He wrestles Moses Schwartz tonight.
Yep.
So
is it tonight or Friday?
No, I think it's tonight. Like, I'm almost positive it's tonight. So anyway, 41 or 49, excuse me, not a lot of change. 57. And by the way, if you guys are not using this website, fantasygrade.com, it's free. Just go set up an account. All sorts of cool tools on here, which we're going to use here in a minute to look at some duels. Will Lewan lost, so he drops again. So this is the Seabrick loss, correct, guys? This is what bumped him down. So
yes,
that was an interesting match. That was Friday night. I was in Kansas City trying to watch it on my phone, and 1-1, which is a typical Lewan match, and then he hits a go behind, and he's around just about almost knocked my remote over, just about coming behind, and then Seabrick just cartwheels. And I mean, we're going to see Seabrick Sunday. Him and G Feller. I mean, what a great matchup! Number 10 against number 11 there. Like, is he a guy, GT, that you feel like could All-American?
I mean, with this weight class, I mean, there's a lot of potential in the non, like kind of outside of the top 16. They could make their way up in there. They just could turn it on and all of a sudden become really good, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he can be. 100% think he can be. I mean, he's proven that the moment is not that big for him, and he just wrestles and does his thing.
So if you look at his chart, I mean, that's almost like just flat, like just a straight flat line of improvement every week. I mean, you got to love that if you're Iowa or him. So 65. These are.
David, I think they're a little wrong on that, because Mikey Carr beat him, pretty soundly. I mean, the score wasn't a huge deficit, but the match itself was, and they got David Carr 2 spots behind him. Mikey Carr. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't understand why he's down there, because somebody put him 17th instead of where he probably should be. So I would say,
that's fair.
Probably number 12, and I would put Carr up there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the sources, Carr's actually undefeated. He's just 4-0. But yeah, 65. Just so you guys don't think that this is a mistake, these are the rankings that came out Wednesday before the match last night. So what's interesting about this too, if David Carr were to win the Big 12s and everything else is chalk, now we're back to David Carr, Quincy Monday as a possible semifinal, which the old Carr Monday, and then that would give us O'Toole Griffiths, which was the national finals last year. So not a lot of movement here at all. Tanner Cook, though, 74. Bailey O'Reilly moves up. DJ Washington moves up. And Contreras moves up. So O'Malley is sort of in free fall the last couple of weeks. If you see this chart, he was in that 8, sort of that 6 to 9 range all year, and then has just gone the wrong way here the last couple of weeks. So, I mean, that's a guy to keep an eye on. Cade DeVos, a good win for him. He beat Plott. Plott's probably ranked. I don't think anybody should have him in the top 7. And so that would probably pull him down a little bit. And the Big 12 is now much more interesting at this weight with Mako, Plott, Demetrius Romero, and Tate Piccolo's having a good year as a freshman, and Cade DeVos. So, like, that'll be a very, very interesting top 5 guys there. 84, Chalkity Chalk Chalk. 97, Bastida. He's coming off a couple losses here. So, but a guy, again, is top 6 all year. He had a tough little run where he had to go against Bonacorsi and Elam. And this weight, we'll talk about this more in the next couple of weeks, but this weight is so matchup driven, like who would beat who. But really, really interesting. The other thing is this: if Max Dean and Beard are 2 and 3, I'm almost positive Beard would get the 2 seed, because when they're that close, usually the head-to-head is the criteria if they're 1 slot apart. 285, very chalky again. So we go to the team rankings, which we probably need to spend a few more minutes on. So Penn State, basically 112, Iowa 66, Nebraska 64, Missouri 61, basically, and they will drop because of the tool. So I'd have to go back and look at where Zach Elam was. Let me see. So he was 7th. So he'll drop to either 8th or 9th, which will hurt them. And they're going to lose 4 points at 165. Iowa State will pick up 4 points, which will bump them up right next to Ohio State. So we do this periodically. I'll just ask you guys this. Do you think that – I'll just make it very simple. Do you think that the Nationals will finish Penn State, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri in that order? Mark?
No.
GT?
So you kind of cut out there. What was the question, buddy?
Do you think that the team race will finish top 4, Penn State, Iowa, Nebraska, Mizzou in that order?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I mean, and it could just be as simple as those are the right 4 teams, and 2, 3, and 4 get jumbled up a little bit. So let me ask you this way. Do you think those will end up being the top 4 teams, GT?
No.
Mark?
No.
All right. I will not ask you to say anything negative about anybody.
I just think that there's so much variables that we still don't know yet for us to even have a legitimate idea of where this could all end out at, because we still have after conferences. I think I would be a little bit more convinced to say, hey, I could plant my flag on this.
Right.
But I think the other thing that really is very interesting about the team race is where some of those matchups, right? Like, hey, if whatever it is, let's say Mekhi Lewis gets the 4 seed and he's on the same side as Starachi. Like, that's not good for Virginia Tech.
Right.
I think, like, also, if, let's say, I don't know, using another thing is like, okay, for Nebraska, if Peyton Robb ends up being, like, I don't know, and he gets beat at the Big Tens and all of a sudden he drops to the 4 seed or the 3 seed and he's on the same side as somebody else, who knows? Because 57 is kind of crazy.
Yeah, 57 is crazy. You're right. Yeah.
So I think if you get to a point where you kind of know, like, that type of place, I could feel very much more comfortable with, what they bring to the table, right?
Yeah. And what's cool about what you're saying is if you click on the team, like I just clicked on Nebraska, right? And their guys that are ranked in the top 8 are Cronin, Hardy, Robb, and Labriola. Okay. I mean, those guys are ranked, just quick math, they're ranked 4, 4, 1, and 2. That's 12.5, 25, 35, 45, 55, 61 points right there without bonus. But I mean, all these numbers are without bonus. Like, I think the guy that I'm most comfortable is going to be an All-American is Labriola. Like, I mean, he's just done it before. I mean, Peyton Robb has too. So, I mean, those two. But Hardy and Cronin they deserve to be where they're ranked, but they're not like some other guys that have placed 3 or 4 times like a Labriola has. I mean,
it wouldn't surprise you if they placed 7th or 8th or round of 12 and got beat by somebody.
I don't know round of 12, but I could see those guys 5 through 8, right? And have wrestled good and just lost 2 1-point matches, right?
Yep.
I mean, I think that's just the case. And that's what's cool about if you go through this chart. So, like, if you look at Iowa, right? So, like, they've got their hitters are Spencer, Woods, Murin, is kind of there. Kobe Seabrook's kind of there. Patrick Kennedy's kind of there. Abe Assad's kind of there. Warner's kind of there. Cassiope. So they have like 3 guys in the top 3. And then they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in the round of 12. And then another guy, 2 more guys in the round of 16. And you have a guy like Nelson Brands who's going to wrestle really hard. And like, I just looked up his stats to get ready. All his losses are by 1 point this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, plus it's just everybody's coming to the table from that team. So it's another way to look at it. And then, like you look at Missouri, who are their guys in the top 8 from the bottom? Zach, Rocky, Mako, Keegan, Mahler. Okay, so Mahler's done a medal before. O'Toole's medal before. Rocky's medal before. Mako and Zach Elam have not. And then you got JQ's round of 12, Hart round of 12, 2 other guys qualifying. So, I mean, I guess it's sort of like what do you like best? But this is just a fascinating thing to look at. So I'm going to pull up a couple duels, and rather than just go through and pick all these things, maybe just point stuff out, and then because there's 3 or 4 I want to get to. So Bedlam is up again. There's going to be several different matchups. 25 will be different. Yeah, 74 will be different, and I think 84 will be different because Keegan Moore wrestled 97 last time. But OSU is obviously the favorite. The path to victory for OU is Prada to win at 25, Schwartz to win at 41, Mitch Moore to win at 49, Ninehouse to win at 65, Heinzelman to win at heavyweight, and then they steal one. They either steal Tate Picklow Plot or Keegan Moore Whitlake. And then hope they don't get bonused at 33, 57, or 97. But that was a duel. GT, this was during the World Cup last time, right? Like we were coming back to the arena when it was happening. So let me just ask you, I'll just ask you this. How many matches does OU win, Mark?
3.
GT.
Let's say 2.
I think 3. So I think we're all on the same page there, but it'll be fascinating. So I want to pull up a couple other ones. So there's Cornell, Ohio State, which I think will be interesting. So again, guys, if you're just listening to this, you can go back and watch it or just get on fantasygrade.com, go to the duel section, and you just plug in 2 teams. So first of all, some great matchups here, right? Like Yanni Sasso, which we've seen, but still great. Vito Mendez, which is exciting. Foca, Ethan Smith. Cardenas, Gavin Hoffman. Fernandez, Fernandez, Tate Orendorff. So, and then, Jonathan Lowe has been ranked really high this year versus Romero. Julian Ramirez, Carson Karchla. I believe Carson Karchla is better than 12th in the country. And Cornella and D'Amelio is interesting. And even Unger, Malik Heinzelman. So on favor, Cornell's favored at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches. So I'll just ask you guys this. Who wins the duel?
Grant?
I think Ohio State wins it, but I think it's 5-5.
And this is if they wrestle everybody, because like Karchla set out last week, and so did some other guys. So this is hitters on hitters.
Right, but I think I would say probably as far as swing matches are concerned, like let's say, Ohio State gets 1, I think, Cornell swings another. So I don't think it's like unless they run the table, I still think it's 5-5. I think it's 5-5, and it's going to come down to bonus. I think probably the weight class that I think is going to be probably the most clutch one out of the entire duel is probably Hoffman Cardenas.
Yeah, that's a great match. And this is sort of like the Mizzou Iowa State duel where it went 7-3 last night, but it could just as easily have gone 6-4 the other way. So, Marco, who you got?
I'm going to go with Cornell because I think Cornell can win 6 matches. I'm not saying they're going to, but I think they can. I think they can win 25. I think they can win 33. I think they can win 41. They're going to win 49 because he's beaten them every time they've ever wrestled. And you got Ramirez against Karchla. Karchla's losing every match by a point one way or another. Ramirez just beat somebody really, really good. So I think realistically he's got a really good shot. And I think Polka can beat Ethan Smith. I think it could be a 6-4, 7-3 duel because 97, I think, could go with Cornell also. I don't think all that will happen, but I could see Cornell winning the match. I see them favored or a little bit better at certain weights, so I'd probably go with Cornell to win, probably 6-4.
Yeah, it's an interesting duel, right? Because like the two favorites feels like Yanni, and not that Sasso's not really an amazing wrestler, but he seems to know how to beat him, and Patty Gallagher. So that's sort of 1-1 there, and then if you kind of pick them off, like. I mean, there's feels like some just really toss-up-y matches, like 97 heavy, 74 feel like really toss-ups. I mean, I feel like probably Arujau wins, but probably Heinzelman wins. So this will be a really, really, really good duel to watch. And it's interesting that there's such a good non-conference duel this late in the year. Speaking of really good non-conference duels, we got one more, which is Nebraska against Arizona State. So just before we talk about who's going to win the duel, at least one or two really good individual matchups. Courtney against Cronin is really big for seeding. I mean, Jesse Vasquez is a guy who's been a little banged up, but him and Hardy would be interesting. It's just a shame Teamer's not wrestling because Teamer, Peyton Robb would be absolutely is just popcorn material. I don't know that Norfleet's going to be that healthy. So this is sort of the opposite of the Ohio State duel we just looked at with Cornell, where this one feels like, okay, like, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but Arizona State's favored at 33, Nebraska's favored at 41, Arizona State's favored at 49, Nebraska's favored at 57, Nebraska's favored at 65, Nebraska's favored at 74, Nebraska's favored at 84, Nebraska's favored at 97, Arizona State's favored at heavyweight. And so it's like 6-3 Nebraska, and that 125 match feels very toss-up-y. So for Arizona State to get 5 wins, they got to win the toss-up. And they probably got to steal. I mean, I think the two most likely are 41 and 84. You guys, am I close there, or do you guys see it differently?
I think Arizona State could win 165. Bubba Wilson's kind of up and down. He's not. I don't know who they're going to put in there, but I mean, I don't put a lot of faith in Bubba Wilson right now, what he's done. He's ranked, 28th, 29th? So, yeah, I mean, I could see that being an upset, Arizona State winning that. But I think they're going to have a tough time winning the duel, David. I really do. Because I think Nebraska is wrestling really, really well right now. I'm not sure what kind of national team they are because, I'm not sure Brock Hardy's going to place 4th. I don't think Cronin may place 4th. But I think they'll be All-Americans. And then you got your, Peyton Robb, number 1. I think the kid from North Carolina is just as good as anybody in that weight, and they haven't wrestled yet. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing.
Yeah, and the other match we didn't talk – well, GT, first of all, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'll just echo what kind of Mark had said. I think the discrepancy between the highs and the lows on both sides is – I mean, once again, it's also college wrestling duels, so lots of weird things can happen and people can get caught and pinned all the time.
Yeah.
But I think if you just look at it by the numbers and you look at kind of matchups and things like that, I think it's for whoever it is, Cale Valencia, he's young. Labs is, 18th year senior.
He's a provost. He's a provost.
Right. I think he has stock now in the University of Nebraska wrestling program. So I think he's getting some dividends paid back. Maybe getting
now
some
you're
student
speaking
loans
my
paid
language,
off.
GT. Yeah, now you're speaking my language. Yeah.
Right. Here we go. So, I mean, once again, I think, maybe there's a coming out party for some of these guys that are younger that all of a sudden, make a name for themselves as undual. But like to Mark's point, it's a clear cut, like, hey, really, really tough match, lopsided, tough match. So I think it's all those things that basically college wrestling is. But once again, if you get Montalvo and Pinto, like, okay, maybe like guy on the round of 12-ish, maybe he just had a good win a couple of weeks ago. He jumps up in the rankings. Maybe that could be a match that gets interesting in a dual meet scenario because we only got 10 weights.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's definitely an interesting. I think the Cornell Ohio State duel feels a lot like the Missouri Iowa State duel, where like it could like go 7-3, 3-7, and this one feels like Nebraska's probably going to win 5 matches at least. And I mean Arizona State's going to have to hustle to win 5. Now, I mean, they could get bonus points at heavyweight, though. I mean, that.
And 33.
And 49.
Yeah.
But again, it's hard to win without winning 5 matches. So I think the other thing that's fascinating is just if you go back to the team scores, like if you look at Iowa and Nebraska, they're 2 points apart. Iowa beat Nebraska in 8 out of 10 matches in the duel. Like, it's almost like your brain would not process that's how it goes. So it's just super interesting. Anyway, all right. So just to wrap up, the Iowa State tournament is this weekend. The NAIA conferences are this weekend. A million state tournaments are going on this weekend, next weekend, the weekend after that. Missouri bumped theirs back a weekend. So all of us on this podcast wrestled in the state tournament. All of us have pretty good memories from that. And we've all coached a lot of guys and girls over the years that have done really well in the state tournament. So I want to give a big shout out. I think sometimes when we get to do the 50,000-foot view thing, that we forget how important it is to some kids to win a state title or win a state medal, just to win a state medal or even qualify. Like some kid that maybe just started wrestling or comes from a broken home, and wrestling gave them guidance, wrestling gave them structure, and gave them a second family, or in some cases, literally a first family. And so not everyone's going to win gold medals over the next 3-4 weeks. And some people will do amazing things because they didn't. And I think that's, all of us, none of us were 4-time state champions. So we all lost to that tournament at least once. And some of those tournaments are super freaking hard. And so I just want to, I think I'd speak for all of us and say best of luck to everybody competing. Awesome to see how many girls state tournaments are happening now. Specifically in Missouri, it got so big that this year there's 2 classes instead of 1. So that's awesome growth. And because of that, the state tournament got bumped from 3 days to 4 days. And I mean, I don't think anybody cares about the mechanics of that, but it's just awesome to see growth. So we want to wish everybody the best of luck. And one of my favorite weekends of the year is coming up this weekend, where I get to be in person with the boys. And so come to Joe's Place. If you're in Iowa City on Sunday, come to Joe's Place. Mark and GT will be signing autographs. So you can get that early, get pictures with the boys. So for Mark and Grant, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll see y'all next week.